There we go. Alrighty. So thank you both so much for taking the time today.
You're
You're
welcome.
very welcome.
And so let's just start with a kind of introduction. So Lisa, you are an author of children's books.
Yes, I'm a children's book author. I have been doing this since like 95, so
Oh
for quite
wow.
a few years. Um, Someone Builds a Dream was my 51st book for children.
Oh wow.
So I have quite a few books out. I love my job, best job in the world.
That is
And
some tenure.
I feel like this is one of the most important books that I've ever written.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. And of course, we'll dive into that a little bit more too. And Jeffrey, you are an electrician by trade, correct?
Yep. I'm in the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers,
Okay.
local 58. I've been in since 1999, and yeah, it's been wonderful. It's not the profession I thought that I was going to go into. I got in at 24, and so I spent a few years dabbling with college or entering the workforce, and then I entered the apprenticeship program and been in there ever since.
Oh wow. Okay. So let's we can talk a little bit too about, each of your individual experiences with the trades. Now, Lisa, I reached out to you.
Yeah.
Um and it was interesting. I'm glad I'm getting a chance to actually tell you this story in person. Um we just went to a Barnes and Noble, and my son, 3 years old, just pulled out Someone Builds the Dream. He had no prior knowledge of anything. He just pulled it out. He took one look at it. He said, "I want this book."
Oh,
It's like, okay, so we picked it out. My wife actually picked it out. And we stood there in Barnes and Noble, opened it up, and she was like, "You need to see this right now." It's like, okay, so I opened it up. I took a look at it, and I was like, "Wow, I didn't even know something like this existed." And I thought it was so fantastic that it was this, uh, very understandable, very approachable take on what trade skills are and how vital they are to everything. So, I definitely want to say thank you so much for writing that.
and thank
Um,
you for sharing your story, because I always say that when my books leave home, just like your kids, they don't write, they don't call. Have no idea where they're at. So now I know where my book is, ended up.
Yes, yeah, we have it. We have it, and we read it very frequently. I like to read that
Awesome.
book, Tim. It's a very, very, very nice book. So thank you so much for writing that. But yeah, I guess my biggest question for you is, what really inspired you to write that book?
I think it's a book that was probably germinating, and I didn't even know it my whole life. And the catalyst was my husband and I, in the summer of 2018, were remodeling our master bathroom. And we do all the work ourselves. My husband's a jack of all trades. He worked in the skill, he was a metal fabricator for many, many years.
Oh
And
wow.
so he can pretty much do a little bit of everything. So I'm standing in the shower and I was doing the tiling,
Okay.
and I started to cry because I'm a perfectionist and they weren't cooperating.
Oh no.
The tiles were like not absolutely perfect. And I started to think about the people who have to do this every day. They can't stand and cry in your shower when things aren't perfect. And then my husband showed me two tiles out of the same box and put them together. And I saw that one was about an 1/8 inch bigger than the other. And he goes,
Oh
"You're
no.
trying for perfection with an imperfect product." So
Oh
I
no.
calmed down. But as I continued tiling, I started to think about that. And I remembered, like, years ago, him coming home from work, and had a really rough day. And I said, what happened? He goes, "Oh," he says, "sometimes what the engineers and designers draw on paper don't actually work in the 3D world."
Right.
And I go, "So what are you guys going to do?" Because he worked with a team, and he goes, "Well, our job is to make it work." And so that was going on in my
Ah.
mind. And so by the time the bathroom was done, which took us 4 months, I had a good first draft of the book written. And so it all began with that experience. But my great grandfather was a coal miner. And I like to say the coal that he mined was burned in the steel mill where my grandfather worked his entire life.
Sure.
And my dad was a welder who welded the barges that carried the steel down the rivers.
Oh, wow.
And then my husband was a metal fabricator who used that steel in his job. And so there was this connection.
Yeah.
And so in the book, I try to show those connections of how we all need each other. And,
It
one
came
job
through.
can't get done without the other. Yeah.
Wow. No, it definitely came through, because like I said, I think a lot of people tend to not think about how much of a backbone skill trades can be and how much they are. So I think, yeah, it definitely came through. Were you aware of the growing kind of skill trades gap while you were writing the book?
I did. I had that in the
Okay.
back of my mind. I didn't set out to write this book for that reason.
Right.
Usually books just fall into my head, and that's how this one did.
Sure.
And then I was like, there's a need for this because,
Mhm.
anybody you talk to in skilled trades, there's shortages all over the place. And so I felt like, you know what? Maybe if we can show kids that you don't have to go to college, you can go to trade school, or you can get an apprenticeship like Jeff did.
Yep.
That would be a great way to go.
That's
So
Yeah, I mean, and to think, it's been going on for so long now. So Jeffrey, you said that going in as an electrician was not your immediate career choice. How did you get into the world of skill trades?
Well, my dad was a member for 33 years,
Okay.
and um, he wanted something different for me. So, he sent me to a very prestigious high school in my area, Catholic school, wanted me to go to college and do something better. As in his words, he didn't want this for me.
Okay.
And so I didn't think about it for a few years. And then I just didn't really enjoy college. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Sure.
And I was wasting time, wasting money. I got into the restaurant business, and I was just kind of, I was successful, but it just wasn't fulfilling and not what I thought I was going to do. And then it just so happened in 1999 that industry was booming, and he said, "Hey, look, you can try this out. It's a summer helper program, and it's no risk. Just try it out."
Okay.
And I got on the job, and I really enjoyed it. I was building things. I was learning how things worked. I was in places that people just don't get to go. You have to be behind. I got behind the scenes in very interesting buildings. I remember one week I worked at the big three all in one week. I was at Ford, then GM, and then Chrysler all in
Oh,
one week.
wow.
I was like, wow, how interesting, So yeah, so how I got into it was basically, my dad tried to keep me out of it, and I ended up going into it.
Funny how
So,
that happens.
yeah.
Honestly, it's as similar for me as well. My dad, I grew up around my dad working in the hydraulic industry, and he has a full service hydraulic business. And I spent a very large portion of my life trying to avoid it, and then somehow here we are. But what? I'm actually happy to be in this position now anyway. So yeah. But that, it's very interesting that you said that, Jeffrey, because I think a lot of people too, they get stuck at that position when it's, hey, I'm going to college. It's not really my thing, but then they're not really aware of what options are out there. Now, once you got into it, what has your experience been like with the trades, from the time that you got into it to now? And you still work actively as an electrician, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so yeah. So what's your experience been like so far?
Well, I have noticed that there has been a slow exodus of our numbers.
Okay.
When we first started out, there was 6,000 members, and now we're 4,000 members. So
Oh
we've
wow.
lost 2,000 members in 20, almost 23 years.
Wow.
Um, Now, a lot of that is okay. Um, with advances in technology, there's better equipment, and things can be done faster. Back in the day, they used to had to build scaffolding to get to places. Well, now we have lifts,
Right.
and we used to have to run extension cords everywhere to run our power tools. Well, now we have battery powered tools.
Okay.
So things have progressed with technology. So some of our numbers, maybe we don't need as many, but and in my industry or my union is unique. If Detroit is low in numbers,
Hmm.
people from around the country can come and work in our area. So it's kind of like it's an international thing. So if you have a card member in, let's say, Miami, Florida, you
Hmm.
can come work. You can come work in Detroit if you want.
Oh, okay.
So we're kind of unique in that way. But yeah, so I've right now, uh, our membership is um, very old. 40% of our membership is 55 and older. So
Wow.
we're going to have a severe need for replacing people,
That's
as
interesting.
they retire.
Can I ask a question, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff,
Please.
have you seen more women entering the trades? Like
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
yeah.
I really have. I remember if you saw a girl when I first got in, that was rare. Uh, there were probably I was talking to someone about this not too long ago. I think there were probably 2 dozen women back in 1999, and now I would say there's 200 women. So,
Wow.
no, I know that's not a dramatically larger number, but I do see also uh, an increase in minority numbers as well. Like
Okay.
they all increased over the last 20 years.
That's true. And you will see online as well, a pretty big push towards things like women in STEM. A lot of organizations are trying to push towards that. So that's very interesting, and it's good, and it's very validating to hear that it is working. So that's great. That's fantastic.
It
Um,
is. And our industry has changed in different ways too, as far as the reason why some of the reasons why they said women really didn't fit in was because of how heavy things were. And so they were like, we can't expect her to lift as much as him. Well,
right.
things have changed.
Of
And
course, yeah.
so now it's no, that's not true anymore. Yeah. So we can't use that one anymore. But no,
No, I mean it was always and like you rightly said, Jeffrey, with the changing in technology, things are so much different now.
Mhm.
There are so many more efficient ways to do so many different things. So no, that's great. That's good to hear. Now, for both of y'all, Lisa, I know your experience with the trades is definitely more of a periphery. Having not actively been in it yourself, but both of y'all have such good experiences with people in the trades and being in the trades yourself. What is it like? What are the individuals? What are they like? Obviously they'll have good days, bad days. Do you say the good days outnumber the bad days? What about their quality of life? what are some of their frustrations, things like that. Like what are their experiences? And Jeffrey, obviously, what are your experiences like that too?
Okay.
And I think Jeff is probably better suited to answer this, but from my own experience, I was raised by my stepdad,
Okay.
and he came home from Vietnam and met my mother, and she had 4 children. And when they got married, they had 2 more. And when he first got back from Vietnam, he had a hard time finding a job. I think he worked on a garbage truck for a while.
Okay.
And then he went to an apprenticeship program or a trade school, excuse me, a trade school to learn welding. And that's how he raised us for many, many years, by this skilled trade. And so I saw a difference as a kid in, I think, how he felt about his job, about how much he could bring home, because the pay for somebody working on the back of a truck compared to, being a welder. And all the people that I know, because we have so many family members, not just on me and Jeff's side, that's my family side, but on my
Right.
husband's side, in the trades, so many of them, and they make a good, decent living.
Wow.
And I think people need to know that, when I was raising my children, I pushed college because I never had the opportunity to go to college.
Sure.
So I thought, in order to get a good job, you have to go to college. And I pushed and I pushed, and now they're like so deep in debt, because I paid for their first 4 years, but then of course, if they go on to get a master's or whatever, and none of them are working in what they have their degrees in, except for the youngest, and she's a librarian and she makes very little money. So
Wow.
it's kind of like, I think now that maybe a lot of people who grew up, like Jeff said, his dad didn't want him to go.
Right.
And that's, I feel like our parents always wanted something better for us. So college was the thing. And I did the same thing to my kids. And now I wonder, like, boy, would they have been better off if I would have knew about this choice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this doesn't answer your question, but I've posed this scenario to many people, that while they were going to college, I was earning money, and like Lisa said, not everyone stayed in their field of where they got their degree, and they kind of floundered around and they had the college debt. Meanwhile, I did not have the college debt. I making more money and getting raises every year. For the last 6 years, I've made 6 figures easily. And it's not limited. It can go well. I mean, I'll never get 7 figures, but it's just how much I want to work. But
Exactly.
I do pose the people to young people. I'm like, well, college, if that is something you want and there's something you want to do, then college is for you. But if you're not sure, consider the skilled trades, because not only is this something that you can do when you're at work, it is also something you can do when you're off of work. I can make money at home doing my trade for people that I know, electrical work for people around their house and stuff. So I can also have a little side business. It's a skill that can never be taken away from me.
Absolutely.
Now, your question about what I see in the industry, it ranges from, I see some brilliant people and they amaze me with how they're able to understand all the engineering, all the very intricate details, and see it in their mind and bring it to life. And then I also see people that they call hide and seek for $1,000 a week, where basically they're there and they're getting paid and they don't care to be productive.
Oh my gosh.
But they get paid. Yeah.
Wow.
So I see everything in between. I'm a perfectionist. So it took me 15 years to get to where I wanted to be in my industry, for myself. And, it's a hard industry to perfect because everything's ever changing, but I'm very confident now in what I do.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. I don't think I asked this up front, but are you a journeyman electrician?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So that I should have just kind of taken that for granted, but I said I'll
Yeah,
ask.
and I could be a master electrician,
Okay,
but there's no need for me to be a master electrician.
gotcha.
Uh,
Gotcha.
um, I don't own a business, and
Mm,
I don't need to hold the license for the company that I work for. Someone else
right.
does, and those are that's all. That's the only reason why I don't do that.
Interesting. So I obviously based on the conversation so far, y'all are both aware of the skill trades gap. I mean, you're both seeing it firsthand. Eh, What do you think has been one of the major contributors towards that growing skill trades gap?
Jeff, you go first.
Okay, well, it's something that Lisa kind of alluded to before, that it was always ingrained in the previous generation that college was the only way to move forward and be successful and kind of, you know, make make a large amount of money a year,
Right.
and that I think that is breaking down. I kind of see a little bit of a spark. Lately, I've seen uh, more young people coming into my industry that I've seen in the last 23 years. I
Wow.
see a lot more 19, 20-year-old individuals, where in the past I've seen 30, 35 people that tried something else and maybe, came into it later,
Right.
so I do see a spark of hope for the future.
That's
But
good.
yeah, I do. And millennials aren't that bad. No.
I mean, yeah, definitely depends on who you ask, but I fall in that camp as well. So yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, Lisa, what do you think? Obviously,
Well,
yeah,
part of what Jeff said, because what we repeated about parents that push you into other wet things. But
hmm
I also think, growing up in a blue collar family, and I still use the term blue collar, working class, whatever.
yeah,
I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of a stigma,
hmm
and people feel like um, that if you're in that, like there's a tendency that you might be looked down on,
yeah,
which is ridiculous because I have never met anybody who maybe makes a lot of money and like does what I do, say writing. I don't make a lot of money writing, but
right,
I can't do my own electricity. I can't do
right,
so like we need these people.
yes,
So to look down on anybody like that, is it's just crazy. It boggles my mind. But I do know I grew up south of Pittsburgh and
okay,
everybody's dad worked at the steel mill.
yeah,
That was like the thing. And
yeah,
so it was always that ingrained that like, do you want to have to work in the mill the rest of your life? By
okay,
the time I was um, I think 15 or 16, all the mills started shutting down and people knew like,
wow,
oh, what now?
yeah,
So I feel like if you like to work with your hands, my husband would have went crazy working in an office. He likes to keep busy. He
yeah,
building and he likes to think things through and, he worked in an automotive prototype shop where
okay,
they had to prototype cars and they had the problem solve all the time, and I think he really liked being able to use his mind but also keep working with his hands.
sure.
So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's what I
No,
think.
no, yeah,
And I also, like, when the book first came out, I was somebody reached out to me. The book came across their desk and it was a nonprofit, and I can't think of the name of it now, but if you want it, I'll look for it and get it to you. But what they do is shadow people who are in trade school, and they try to
okay,
find the perfect job for them so that as they get out of trade school, they can go right into a job. So
sure.
they shadow them, and then they also have connections with a whole bunch of people who are hiring people from the trades. So yeah,
Interesting.
me and the illustrator interviewed with them, and it was very cool. So
Oh,
Yeah,
very, yeah.
yeah.
we've seen something along those lines, where in the inner city of Detroit, We've seen seniors that took a test, and I don't know what the test was about, but it would say, you're more, you should be maybe in carpentry, or you
Oh, it
should be,
was like one of those
yeah,
what career kind of pathway you want to go down type tests. Okay.
yep.
Yeah,
And then
okay.
the major company, which was a company called Bart Mallow, they're like the general contractor, and they said, hey, we have 5 people that we would like to have as a pre-apprentice electricians, and they can shadow your workers. And so it was kind of like a program, like she said, where
Mhm.
they had 6 months to try it out, and if they liked it, we could decide to keep them or not.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Um, and obviously, I'll touch a little bit more about the project that we're working on, which is Project Dragonfly. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a bit. Um, but all of this is very good information because these are things that, again, not a lot of people know about, not a lot of people are aware of, and it's stuff that if people did know, it might actually encourage them a little bit more to say, hey, this is something that I could see myself doing, this is something that I can see a pathway to get to where I need to be. And I think that's fantastic. Now, with regards to the actual problem itself, with and Jeff, you seeing this firsthand, if this problem continues to go unaddressed, a lot of people are trying different approaches for it, obviously myself included. But if this goes unaddressed, where do y'all think this is going to end up? Like, what do you think is going to end up happening if this problem keeps growing?
Honestly, uh, if we can't get enough people from our local area, we'll definitely have to bring people. When a larger project comes up, we would have to bring people from either out of state or out of country. And
Mm,
so basically, we would, instead of exporting some of our other goods, we'd be importing workers,
mm,
just to handle those certain size projects. I mean, there are projects that require 1,000 construction workers for a year or two,
wow.
and and not many places can handle that. And if our numbers keep dwindling, it's going to get harder and harder to do that. And then, what I worry about is who's going to pay my pension. If I don't have enough people to replace me, then all the stuff I did was for naught. And
Wow.
that's something that worries me.
That is scary. Lisa, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, what Jeff was saying there was I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, well, for years people have come here to go to school from other countries. Couldn't they come here to go to trade school as well?
Yeah,
Like, wouldn't that
yeah,
be an awesome
yeah,
program? But I do think that we have a lot of people in our country that need to start thinking along these lines.
yeah.
And I don't know how you convince kids who have grown up with electronics and everything easily accessed to work with their hands. I mean,
Yeah,
because a lot of times I think some people are just born that way. They
yeah,
always are very tactile and they want to work with their hands. But I know, like with some of my nieces and nephews, just getting them to put down the controller, you know, and go outside is like a big deal. So yeah, convincing these kids, I think it needs to start early
yeah.
and just showing them another way. That's why I love the STEM programs. And I said,
Mhm.
when that was what I knew when this idea came to me, like, oh my gosh, STEM teachers are going to love this because
Absolutely.
it circles all of them. But I feel like maybe not in my lifetime, but if this continues, what in the world are we going to do as a society when we don't have people to make our toilets flush? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just so many different things that you take for granted. Jeff, we had a blackout a couple weeks ago and we were without power for 3 days. And I was a mad woman. I do not
Oh my
handle that
gosh.
well at all. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, we're just gonna, thank God for those electricians. When my lights went on, I was like, thank you, boys. I love it. 'Cause, yeah, I don't do well under those circumstances.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no air conditioning, nothing,
Yeah, made me think when I was a kid, I had an erector set. Remember those erector sets?
Yeah.
They're little piece
Mhm.
of metal nuts, and that I always enjoyed. But I remember specifically, my dad and I were building a backboard for my basketball and basketball hoop, and he was using Unistrut that he took from work, and he couldn't figure out how to put this one piece. And I came up and I said, Dad, how about like this?
Mm.
And just me looking at his face light up like, yeah, my son can think and build and engineer. And I just remember that moment going, I like this. I
Wow.
like with my hands right there. And I was 12 years old, and it stuck with me. You know,
That's
that
such a nice story, and that's one of those things that, like you said, it stayed with you, so that's amazing. Now, it, so Lisa, you kind of touched on my next question, which is really what are we gonna do to address the problem? So, uh, between the both of y'all, I mean, obviously y'all have ideas. What do you think can be done? What do you think is being done to help address this problem right now?
Well,
well,
I hear you hear about it a lot more. I see commercials on TV actually for trade schools, which I
Hmm.
was like, oh, this is so timely, because I started seeing them during COVID.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, yeah, we totally need this. Here's another something I thought about a stigma was when I was growing up, which I'm a lot older than you guys, but when I was growing up, a lot of the kids who didn't do well in school, they would put them in class, like they would go to another school where they were learning trades. And
Okay.
they were the dumb kids. And that's
Wow.
not the way this should ever be thought of, ever,
No.
ever. Like, this is your punishment. You have to go to learn to be an auto mechanic, or you
Oh
have
my
to,
gosh. Yeah.
and I feel like we need to get away from that
Yeah.
and
when you
offer
think about it, do you
yeah,
want the dumb kids building your building and fixing your car?
exactly,
You
exactly.
don't.
Yeah.
And they're not. And
No.
that's the truth of it. It's not just because you're not book smart or you learn in a different way.
Hmm.
Me and my husband discuss this all the time because I'm the type of person I could read a book, take a test, get a straight A, but I might not be able to use that knowledge practically.
Right.
Take algebra 2, for example. I have no idea what I was doing, but I got A's.
Right.
Like, I would never know how to use that. Whereas he can look at something and figure it out and make it work. Like,
Wow.
he can put together anything. I mean, his mind works so different than mine. And
Yep.
so we need to encourage that in kids more
Hmm.
than it just be all written tests. And if you don't,
I agree. I
mhm.
agree wholeheartedly. And Jeff, what do you think? What do you think can be done to help address this problem?
Well, definitely with the rising cost of college, I think more people are naturally looking for alternative careers. And with the STEM programs that are currently in the schools and them working with their hands and using their minds to solve problems, some I'm hoping that has encouraged a lot of people to think about it. You guys mentioned my local advertises all the time on the radio and on the TV, and we try to encourage the youth to join our trade. But
Right.
I I think getting rid of the stigma would be nice. I never felt like my dad. I felt like I was upper middle class growing up
Mhm.
as an electrician's son. I wasn't, but I felt like it. But yeah, I understand that stigma. So yeah, if we could start to erase the stigma of the working with your hands and getting dirty as a bad thing,
Yeah.
that would be another thing that we can do. But I think that the powers that be are seeing the problem and are slowly starting to address it. Wait a second, who is going to build
Yeah.
the next? Who are going to design, things when the people that are doing it now are going to retire?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say with it'd have to do with more school programs and education, and having the counselors encourage more people to say, hey, if you can't afford college, there's an excellent alternative.
Do
Yeah.
y'all think that the efforts that are being put out there, do you think that they're working? Do you think that people are being driven more now, and that the stigma is being erased?
I have seen more youth than I have in the last 23 years. The last 5 years, I've seen more 19 and 20-year-olds as apprentices,
Okay.
So I think that some of them are getting that hint, and we use the word nepotism. So
Mm,
a lot of times it is a second, third generation getting in. So some of that will stop eventually. Like, I don't want to be what my dad and grandpa.
yeah.
But it, like you guys, or Lisa has mentioned too, like, we need these people.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I said, how often do you need an interior decorator? But you always need a plumber.
Yep.
Like, like
Yep.
there's some jobs that you have to go to college and do a lot of studying for, and you probably make good money doing. But when it comes down to what people actually need,
Mm-hmm.
we need the tradesmen.
And we have 1,000 people, 1,000 applicants that we have not brought into our industry. Now, that's because we don't want to flood our area. So we kind of have the opposite problem, where we have 1,000 people that want to be electricians, but we don't have 1,000 jobs for them. So
Interesting.
yeah, and I don't know why we
I
don't.
wonder if it's a regional thing, like some areas have more.
Well,
You know,
Detroit may be an anomaly. We have more car plants than most states, and so there are probably, I would say, in the neighborhood of 20 car plants at least, and they have designs for data centers coming up and battery plants, and all these other different aspects of the car industry, because we're the Motor City. And so yes, I think I do see some of what you're talking about, the deficit.
Yeah.
But in some aspects, I kind of almost see something opposite, where there are a lot of people that want to do what we do, because we make pretty good money. And I think some of that is because in opposite ways, while we were thriving, some of the other industries were not. Some of the other industries that you go to college for, so they're like, maybe I'll do that.
Well, Gordon, I'm just curiosity.
Sure.
Are there certain trades that there are more of a deficit in than others?
So I haven't noticed any one specific trade having that much more of a deficit. I can tell you that the fluid power industry is definitely very hard hit. That is because of my firsthand experience with it. And I think too, it's one of those situations where not a lot of people know what a fluid power technician is. So it's very difficult to find those types of people now. And you can find them, but good luck being able to afford them. They're very expensive. So I know for sure that's one area. The rest of them, No, we're still in that. We're still deep diving into each one, seeing what each one is looking like. But now I find that very interesting, Jeff, what you said there about the reverse problem in Detroit. Um, but I
Yeah,
mean, it's yeah. Sorry, please continue.
well, no, and I've also seen a new industry start to form. The we call them low volt, but the limited energy. The people that run data cables and things that don't have the same power as us.
Yeah.
We're considered medium voltage, and they're considered low voltage,
Okay.
24 volts, DC, things like that. Cat 6, like, internet, Ethernet
Mhm.
things. So that industry I've seen grow from 100, 150 members to over 1,000 members
Wow.
and growing. And I actually expect them to pass us one day
Oh wow.
because power and, well, I've often said this too, where, hey, how many candlestick makers do you see nowadays? No.
True.
I think
Yeah.
I think half of those guys are working out here by my house on 223. They've been out there for months,
Oh.
putting, I think, fiber optics or something in. Which I live in the country, so I'm on a private road. I'll never get to see any of that, but everyone else will get cable. So
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, I mean, industries are evolving. So
Mhm.
maybe where something is decreasing, something else is increasing. It's an ebb
Sure.
and flow type situation.
Sure.
and there's
But
always new materials being invented too
of
that
course, yeah.
change trades,
Yeah.
Well, the electric vehicle. Uh,
Mhm.
my industry, uh, boy, we're we're gonna get slammed in the next 10 years, because if there are going to be charging ports in homes that need to be installed,
That's true.
parking lots,
Yeah.
side streets, everything, it's just going to be booming in
Yeah.
that and yeah, we're right now we created a classification specifically for that. And so that was something that wasn't thought of 10-15 years ago, from us at
Very
least.
true. And who
yeah.
knows what's gonna evolve from that as well.
I hope hydrogen cars, because electric cars, I don't know about that, but that's another discussion.
We could have a whole separate
Yeah, yeah,
fireside chat for that one too. Yeah,
yeah.
trust me, I have a lot of thoughts on that as well. And but no. Okay, so I think all in all, I mean, yeah, we've definitely, everyone can see that there is some type of need. I mean, it's interesting. I never thought about the developments as we continue to see changes in technology, how those needs are actually going to change as well. And that's a very interesting point too, Jeff, about, the electric cars and how things are progressing there. Um, so just to kind of to touch a little bit on what Dragonfly is, just so y'all know, um, that that is our approach. A lot of industries now and a lot of organizations, I should say, have been trying to drive away the stigma by focusing on things like STEM. They've been trying to do a lot more outreach with kids. They've been going to school. Even one of the governing bodies that we have, the National Fluid Power Association, they do a lot of outreach to kids as well. But I think, like, the three of us have kind of talked about, a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is a disconnect between younger individuals coming up and what those trades can actually provide for them as a type of career path. And Jeff, you mentioned that as well, telling people that, hey, college is great if you know what you want to do, but you can actually learn a skill. So the approach that we've been taking with Dragonfly really is to make that connection, try to tell people and promote the positives of it. Say, hey, listen, tradespeople can have a very satisfactory life. They have a high degree of job satisfaction. They make a very good living for themselves and their families. And you can learn these skills and you can take it as far as you want to go. You can make this type of living and you don't have to put yourself in debt for it. And then we're also using very popular culture type things to connect to people as well. The example that I love to give everyone is, especially people, younger people, is everyone has seen Iron Man. They've seen the movie. At the very beginning of that movie, he's welding. He's putting together electric components. He knows how to do these things. And not a lot of people tend to make that connection and say, oh, that's a trade skill. You
Mhm.
know, they don't do that. So that's kind of the approach that we've been taking a little bit more with Dragonfly. And I think the question that I wanted to pose to y'all, especially to, was just, what do y'all think of that approach? Do you think that it is something that people can relate to? Do you think it's a good approach? What are your opinions on it?
I mean, what are our opinions on exactly what?
The approach that we're taking to make that connection for younger
Okay.
people, to make them aware of the positives of trades versus, what they've come to know so far.
Well, I wasn't quite clear on exactly how you're reaching people. Is it just through media
Yes,
or
it's a lot of
okay,
social media presence. We're
okay,
very targeted in the demographics that we're going out to. We're getting to that point where we're going to try to do a lot of in-person speaking as well. Finding where these young people are, career fairs, things like that. And that's kind of the approach that we've been taking.
okay. I was just curious.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, for sure, if I would say when uh, getting testimonies would be something that could go a little bit far too. I mean, like I
mhm.
have so much fun at work. I dance. I listen to music. I can I can talk freely. I'm not. I go to different places.
Yeah,
You know, and there's a pride factor, too, where I can drive down the road and say, "Hey, I worked there. I worked on that. I built that. I did that."
yeah,
So
yeah,
when when you can tell people that, you don't just get dirty. You,
yeah,
you're a creator. You know,
yes,
you make things and you can do something different almost on a daily basis.
yeah,
And and it's not the same old day in and day out. So, if you like to be a creative person and you don't like to go to the same place every day, there are people that like driving to the same path to work, same cubicle, same for 30 years, and then that's it. I'm not one of those people. I like to. I've been at a job for 2.5 years and I'm going crazy. I want to get off this job and go somewhere. Else,
Yeah.
but I definitely think reaching out and having some real life testimonies and people that are passionate about what they do would be something that maybe a younger adult could see. Well, hey,
Yeah.
I like that guy. I like his attitude or her attitude, and I can see myself doing that.
Mm.
And
But
I think something that would be really effective, and because I've seen this done before in a longer version, is when you take somebody's personal story
Mhm.
and kind of do it in sort of a documentary style, but not, you don't have to do it long. These could be 5 minutes
Exactly.
and just
Yeah.
showing how their life was enhanced by
Yeah.
this, and where they came from and how
Yeah.
they found it and got into this and their quality of life now compared to before. I think that would really impress young people. I'm impressed that Jeff can make so much money doing what he loves to do because it's one of those things everybody in the world strives for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not everybody gets that. And
Yeah.
I always say I feel fortunate that I'm able to make a living as a writer, which and with no college education,
Yeah.
self-taught. But yeah, I feel like that would be a great way to impress upon kids, just showing them that personal connection with,
Absolutely.
you know, especially
Yeah,
if you show young people.
I've
Yeah.
always said that if a camera crew followed me, it would be a comedy show. I mean, the, the amount of fun we have in a day is probably, people would be like, wait a second, you make what? And you're having fun? You know? Be like, yes. And if I could say something a little crude, we're allowed
Absolutely.
to we're allowed to pass gas whenever we want. We're not in an office.
Fair enough.
Uh,
No, I think those are fantastic ideas. And I think you are absolutely right. Hearing from people who can show just how much their quality of life has improved, I think that's first class. And actually, on that note, I mean, yeah, Jeff, if you're okay with it, I mean, I'll reach back out to you, and if we can get that written or set up a time where we can chat a little bit more about that specifically, I'd love to do that if you're up for it.
oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it, and
Brilliant.
I definitely would like to see. Uh, we talked about the dumb kids go do. I would like to see more intelligent people do what I do.
Yeah.
It we have to do. We are problem solvers, and we are engineers. We are project managers. We wear many hats, and
Yeah.
if you don't like to use your brain, then you don't want to do what I do. But if you like to be challenged and do creative things, then
Mhm.
skilled trades is the way to go.
Wow. Well, I think that kind of brings us down to the end. I know, Lisa, you probably have to head on out,
Yeah,
but
I've
before.
got a bolt, so I'm gonna say
Okay.
goodbye to y'all.
All
I,
right. All right. Well, Lisa,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for your time, and I'll
Welcome.
definitely be in touch. All right.
All right, and thank you, Jeff. I knew you were the right family member to ask. Tell sis I said hi.
all right, I will.
Okay, bye-bye.
Right. And Jeff, I think just before we kind of end off, is there anything that you would like to say to younger people coming up who might be considering trades, who might be considering something outside of college? What would be your parting words of wisdom to kind of encourage them to look towards the skill trades as a career choice?
Uh, yeah, I would say that if you have any preconceptions of what a skilled trades person is, I would say to remove those from your mind and think of yourself as a skilled trades worker. Think of yourself as someone that is going to have something that can never be taken away from them. Uh, the word skill is something I'm proud of. I'm proud that I have a skill that even if I lose my job, I don't lose my skill.
True.
I can create money with my skill myself. I
Mhm.
can have business myself. I don't have to be limited to working for a company. But if I don't want that stress of being a business owner, I can easily work for a company
Right.
and be an asset to them. I would say to the youth that in anything you do, that you should do it with enthusiasm, with gusto. Have fun. If you're not having fun, then you're not being yourself. Maybe. I mean, at least that's for me.
Mhm.
And I enjoy going in there every day. Also, I get to be a teacher. I have apprentices that work underneath me.
Wow.
So I have an added job that isn't really talked about.
Yeah.
I'm a journeyman that molds people into the their future selves and journeyman
Um,
still, and that it's satisfying. I've seen people that I've taught succeed more than me, and
wow.
that's something I take pride in. Like, hey, I had something to do with that person, and look how successful they are.
Wow.
And also, if you think that getting dirty and working with your hands is bad. Well, I have a very nice house, a very nice car. You know, I take a
Purpose of the
shower.
pudding. Yep.
I can change my clothes and take a shower, and I'm good. You know,
There you
but yeah,
go.
it's
There you
it's.
go.
In the beginning, I said I didn't think I was ever going to do this,
Yeah.
but I'm very, very glad that I did.
That's amazing. That is first class. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for agreeing to this. And I will definitely be reaching out to you in the future. And yeah, I mean, last thing is if you can think of anyone else that might be interested to kind of chat with me the way that you did today, please refer them to me. I'd be happy to continue these types of conversations. All right. But again, thank you so much and all the best to you.
You too.
All right. Take
All right.
care.
All right.